didn't have to kill her. You had that choice, so you said sorry. I'm not going to accept it right now because my heart is cold. And every time I look at my grandkids, they got nobody's mom. And you had a choice, you didn't have to kill her. It's not nothing that she could have done to get killed. She was a good person. She had a whole life ahead of her. I loved her.
The morning of May 28, 2020 began like any other in Jackson, Michigan, neighbors going about their routines, children getting ready for school, and families preparing for another day. But at a home on Chittick Avenue, something terrible was happening. 911, what's your emergency? I think I just heard a gunshot next door. And now, oh my God, there are two men dragging what looks like a body. This frantic call would lead police to discover 30-year-old Shameka Oliver lying outside her home, a single gunshot wound to her head. The mother of 4 daughters was pronounced dead at the scene. The man responsible wasn't a stranger, it was Rodney Stevenson, her boyfriend, her supposed soulmate, the man she believed would finally bring her happiness after years of struggle. On social media, Shameka had painted a picture of newfound joy. Photos showed a smiling couple, a loving mother with her daughters in matching outfits, captions expressing gratitude for finding someone who made her feel whole again. But behind those carefully selected images and heartfelt captions lay a dangerous reality that would ultimately claim her life. If you're watching this video right now, you're not just consuming content, you're bearing witness to Shameka's story. By subscribing to this channel, you're helping ensure that stories like hers aren't forgotten, that patterns of violence are exposed, and that other lives might be saved. This isn't just about true crime, it's about real people and preventable tragedies. What makes someone who claims to love you take your life? And how did a woman known for her warmth, kindness, and resilience end up becoming another statistic of domestic violence? Born on December 2, 1989 in Jackson, Michigan, Shameka Oliver was far more than just a victim in a headline. Friends and family knew her as a beacon of warmth and kindness, someone who radiated positivity despite facing significant challenges throughout her life. After graduating from Jackson High School in 2008, Shameka pursued her passion for helping others by entering the medical field. Her dedication and compassion earned her a supervisor position at Renaissance Northland Home, an assisted living facility where residents adored her attentive care. Colleagues noted how she treated each resident with dignity and respect, the same way she approached every aspect of her life. But Shameka's greatest pride was being mother to her 4 young daughters. Social media posts often showed the girls dressed in matching outfits, a small but meaningful gesture that reflected her devotion to creating a unified, loving family. Despite financial struggles and setbacks, including a house fire that left them starting over, Shameka never wavered in her commitment to providing stability for her children. She was the strongest woman I knew, her 16-year-old daughter Antanesia would later say during court proceedings. It was plenty of time she could have gave up, but she ain't never give up on us. We started from the bottom, our house burned down, we've been through a lot. Shameka had previously survived an abusive relationship, emerging with both scars and wisdom. Rather than becoming bitter, she channeled her experiences into building a better future. She worked extra shifts, saved diligently, and maintained an optimistic outlook that inspired everyone around her. Her mother, Salonda Oliver, often spoke of Shameka's resilience. She was a good person. She had a whole life ahead of her. Have you ever known someone who faced incredible hardships yet still managed to light up a room with their smile? Someone whose strength and adversity made you reconsider your own problems? That was Shameka, a woman who refused to be defined by her struggles, who consistently chose hope over despair. What Shameka wanted most was a complete family, loving daughters, and a partner who would treat them all with respect and kindness. This desire would ultimately lead her into the arms of a man who presented himself as her perfect match, but harbored dangerous secrets. After enduring an abusive relationship that left emotional wounds, Shameka believed she had finally found her soulmate when she met 38-year-old Rodney Stevenson. To her, he represented a fresh start, a chance at the loving partnership she had always wanted for herself and her daughters. "I finally found someone who makes me happy and lets me be myself," Shameka wrote in one social media post, accompanied by photos of the couple smiling together. Her timeline gradually filled with expressions of newfound joy and optimism about their future together. Bree noticed a renewed light in her eyes. After years of struggling alone, Shameka appeared to have found someone who appreciated her strength and supported her dreams. She introduced Rodney to her family, bringing him to dinner at her mother's home, where he sat at their table, ate their food, and engaged in conversation with the woman who would later mourn her daughter's death. What Shameka didn't fully grasp, or perhaps chose to overlook in her quest for happiness, was Rodney's troubling past. Behind his charming facade lay a man with 7 prior felony convictions, including charges for home invasion, drug offenses, and assault. At the time he entered Shameka's life, he was already known to law enforcement as someone with violent tendencies. Even more concerning, when their relationship began, Rodney was out on bond for previous offenses, a detail that would later compound the tragedy of what happened. While Shameka posted about love and second chances, the man beside her in those photos carried a history that foreshadowed danger. Shameka's teenage daughter, Antainya, had misgivings from the start. "Ever since I saw Rodney from when I was little, I knew he was bad news," she would later testify in court. But teenagers' concerns are often dismissed as overreaction or resistance to change, especially when a parent appears happier than they've been in years. For Shameka, Rodney represented everything she thought she wanted: attention, affection, and the promise of stability. The relationship progressed quickly, with Rodney moving into her home on Chittock Avenue, becoming part of the daily lives of Shameka and her 4 daughters. The contrast between public perception and private reality would become a central theme in their relationship. While friends saw social media posts showcasing a happy couple, the dynamics behind closed doors were gradually shifting toward a pattern all too common in cases of domestic violence: control disguised as care, isolation masked as protection, and tension building toward inevitable explosion. As Shameka and Rodney's relationship progressed, subtle indicators of trouble began to emerge. Friends who knew Shameka well noticed changes in her behavior. She became less available for social gatherings, sometimes canceled plans at the last minute, and occasionally seemed on edge when discussing certain topics related to her home life. What many in Shameka's circle didn't know was that Rodney Stevenson's criminal history extended far beyond minor offenses. With 7 prior felonies on his record, his pattern of behavior showed an escalating disregard for law and the well-being of others. His charges included home invasion, drug offenses, and, most tellingly, assault. This history of violence should have been a glaring red flag, but like many victims of domestic abuse, Shameka likely believed his promises that the past was behind him. Experts in domestic violence often point to a cycle that begins with charm and intense affection, gradually shifting to control, isolation, and eventually physical abuse. For Shameka, who had already survived one abusive relationship, the warning signs may have been both familiar and easy to rationalize away. After all, she had publicly committed to this relationship, introduced Rodney to her family, and allowed him to become a father figure to her daughters. Antainya, Shameka's teenage daughter, harbored reservations from the beginning. "Ever since I saw Rodney from when I was little, I knew he was bad news," she would later tell the court. Children often perceive relationship dynamics with surprising clarity, unburdened by the emotional investment that can cloud an adult's judgment. Yet Antainya's concerns, like those of many children in similar situations, went unaddressed. Court records would later reveal that Rodney was actually out on bond for previous offenses during his relationship with Shameka, a fact that underscores how precarious their situation truly was. Despite his legal troubles, he managed to maintain the facade of a reformed man building a new life with the woman he claimed to love. The most dangerous time in an abusive relationship often comes when the victim attempts to assert independence, or when the abuser fences their losing control. For Shameka, who had built a successful career and was raising her daughters with clear values and aspirations, maintaining her autonomy would have been non-negotiable, potentially creating tension with a partner accustomed to dominance. What warning signs of domestic violence do you think people often miss? Is it the gradual isolation from friends and family, the excessive jealousy disguised as devotion, Or perhaps the small controlling behaviors that escalate so gradually they become normalized. Understanding these patterns isn't just academic. It can save lives. As May 2020 approached, the relationship between Shameka and Rodney had developed fault lines that would ultimately crack open with devastating consequences. The woman who had survived so much and built a life focused on caring for others was now living with a man whose history suggested he was capable of extreme violence. The morning of May 28, 2020, began like any other day in the 1200 block of Chittick Avenue in Jackson, Michigan. Neighbors went about their routines, unaware that a life-altering tragedy was about to unfold. Inside Shameka's home, an argument erupted between her and Rodney. While the exact details of their dispute remain known only to them, what happened next is clear from police reports and court testimony. Rodney Stevenson, the man who claimed to love Shameka, took out a gun and shot her in the head. The single gunshot echoed through the neighborhood, catching the attention of a nearby resident. This neighbor, hearing the distinctive sound, immediately became concerned and dialed 911. While on the phone with emergency dispatchers, the neighbor witnessed something horrifying through their window. Two men attempting to load what appeared to be a body into a vehicle. "I think I just heard a gunshot next door," the neighbor told the 911 operator, voice trembling. "And now I see they're trying to move someone. It looks like a body." This crucial call would become a pivotal piece of evidence in the case against Rodney Stevenson. Had the neighbor not been alert and willing to get involved, the truth of what happened to Shameka might have been much harder to establish. When police arrived at the scene, they found Shameka Oliver's body outside her home. Medical examiners would later confirm she died instantly from a single gunshot wound to the head. The 30-year-old mother of four was pronounced dead at the scene, her life cut short in an act of senseless violence. What makes Rodney's actions following the shooting particularly disturbing is his complete disregard for Shameka's dignity. Rather than calling for emergency medical assistance, as Judge McBain would later point out any decent person would do, Rodney dragged her lifeless body outside the house. This callous treatment, treating her like an animal, in the words of prosecutors, revealed the true nature of a man who had presented himself as a loving partner. Evidence collected at the scene told a clear story. This was not an accident or act of self-defense, but an intentional killing. The position of the body, the trajectory of the bullet, and witness statements all pointed to a deliberate act of violence, the final escalation in what investigators believed was a pattern of abuse. For Shameka's four daughters, that morning marked the moment they became motherless. For her mother, Salanda, it was the beginning of an unimaginable nightmare. And for the community of Jackson, it was a stark reminder of how domestic violence can escalate to the most tragic conclusion. As police secured the scene and began their investigation, the question wasn't who had killed Shameka Oliver. The evidence against Rodney was overwhelming from the start. The question was whether justice would be served for a woman whose only crime was believing in second chances and the possibility of love. Jackson Police Department responded immediately to the 911 call, arriving at the Chittick Avenue residence to find a scene that matched the neighbor's disturbing report. Shameka's body lay outside her home, a single gunshot wound to her head telling the tragic story of her final moments. Officers secured the area and began collecting evidence, photographing the scene and interviewing witnesses. The neighbor's testimony proved invaluable. Not only had they heard the gunshot, but they had witnessed Rodney and another individual attempting to move Shameka's body, a damning piece of evidence that contradicted any claim of accident or self-defense. Inside the home, investigators found further evidence of the shooting, including blood spatter patterns consistent with the theory that Shameka had been shot indoors and then dragged outside. The murder weapon was recovered at the scene, and ballistics would later confirm it as the gun that fired the fatal shot. Rodney Stevenson was taken into custody that same day. During initial questioning, his statements were inconsistent and failed to explain the neighbor's observations. He claimed to have found Shameka already wounded, but couldn't account for why, instead of calling emergency services, he had attempted to move her body. The Jackson County Prosecutor's Office moved quickly, charging Stevenson with second-degree murder and felony firearm possession. His extensive criminal history, 7 prior felonies, and the fact that he was already on bond for previous offenses at the time of the murder meant he would be held without bail while awaiting trial. As news of Shameka's death spread through the community, those who knew her struggled to reconcile the vibrant, loving mother they remembered with the violent end she had met. Co-workers at Renaissance Northland Home spoke of her dedication to residents and her constant smile. Friends recalled her resilience and unwavering focus on creating a good life for her daughters. For investigators, the case against Rodney Stevenson was straightforward from an evidence perspective, but the senselessness of the crime was difficult to process even for experienced officers. Here was a woman who had overcome previous abuse, built a career helping others, and devoted herself to raising her daughters, only to be killed by the man she had trusted with her heart. If you're watching this video right now, I want you to understand something important. Domestic violence affects every community, every demographic, every socioeconomic level. By liking this video and sharing it, you're helping raise awareness about the warning signs that might save someone's life. Your engagement isn't just about supporting our channel. It's about creating a community that refuses to look away from uncomfortable truths. As Shameka's family prepared for her funeral, they also steeled themselves for the long legal process ahead. Justice for Shameka would require them to relive the worst day of their lives in excruciating detail, facing her killer in court and trusting the judicial system to hold him accountable for robbing 4 young girls of their mother and a community of a beloved member. The trial of Rodney Stevenson began in early 2025, nearly 5 years after Shameka's death. The Jackson County Courthouse, filled with family members, friends, and community members who had come to witness the proceedings and support Shameka's loved ones. Jackson County Chief Assistant Prosecuting Attorney Nathan Hull led the case against Stevenson, presenting a methodical timeline of events from the morning of May 28, 2020. The prosecution called multiple witnesses, including the neighbor whose 911 call had been instrumental in the immediate response and subsequent arrest. The defendant professes love, Hull told the jury during his passionate closing argument. He has no concept of what that word means. He doesn't even understand the word. He treated Shameka Oliver like an animal, like she meant nothing. There was no grace. He did what cowards do. The neighbor's testimony proved particularly damning. They recounted hearing the gunshot and then witnessing Stevenson and another individual attempting to move what appeared to be Shameka's body into a vehicle, actions inconsistent with innocence or accident. Forensic evidence supported the prosecution's case. The medical examiner confirmed that Shameka died from a single gunshot wound to the head, fired at close range. Ballistics matched the bullet to the gun recovered at the scene, which was registered to Stevenson. Throughout the trial, Stevenson's defense attorney, Ronald Berry, argued that there was insufficient evidence for conviction, suggesting that the case was built on assumptions rather than facts. Berry maintained that no one truly knew what had happened inside the home that morning. The jury, however, was unconvinced by the defense's arguments. After deliberation, they returned with a verdict: guilty of second-degree murder and felony firearm possession. While they had the option to convict on first-degree premeditated murder, they ultimately determined that the killing, though intentional, had not been planned in advance. For Shameka's family, the verdict brought a measure of relief, though nothing could fill the void left by her absence. Her daughters, now 5 years older than when they lost their mother, sat in the courtroom as the verdict was read, their young lives forever altered by Stevenson's actions. The conviction represented more than just accountability for one man's actions. It sent a message about the seriousness with which the community and justice system viewed domestic violence. In a society where such cases are often underreported and underprosecuted, Shameka's case stood as a testament to what can happen when witnesses speak up, police respond appropriately, and prosecutors pursue justice vigorously. As the trial concluded and sentencing approached, Shameka's family prepared to face Rodney Stevenson one final time, to speak directly to the man who had stolen their daughter, mother, sister, and friend. On March 5, 2025, the Jackson County Courthouse was packed with Shameka's family and supporters, all gathered for Rodney Stevenson's sentencing hearing. The atmosphere was tense with anticipation as they awaited Judge John McBain's decision. When the moment finally arrived, Judge McBain sentenced Stevenson to 8,120 years in prison for second-degree murder, plus a mandatory additional 2 years for felony firearm possession. With credit for time already served, Stevenson would be 115 years old before becoming eligible for parole, effectively ensuring he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. At 30 years of age, you gotta live to be a really old man before you're going to get out, Judge McBain told Stevenson directly, because in all likelihood you're going to go in the front end of the prison and out the back end of the prison in a body bag. The judge's words reflected his assessment of both the crime and the defendant. Drawing on his 24 years of experience on the bench, McBain noted a pattern he had observed repeatedly. People that are serious domestic violent offenders, it rarely gets better. It often becomes even more significant and even lethal in the end. Before the sentence was pronounced, Shameka's family had the opportunity to address the court and Stevenson directly through victim impact statements. These powerful testimonies revealed the depth of their loss and the extent of their pain. Shameka Oliver, Shameka's mother, spoke with remarkable composure as she confronted her daughter's killer. "My daughter is gone. My grandkids don't have a mom. You had a choice to kill my daughter. You didn't have to kill her. You sat at my dinner table, you ate my food, you talked to me. All that, and you would turn around and just kill my daughter. And not only did you kill her, you played her like an animal." Perhaps most heartbreaking was the statement from Shameka's 16-year-old daughter, Shameka Oliver Ruff. With wisdom beyond her years, she addressed the court. "Ever since I saw Rodney, from when I was little, I knew he was bad news. My mom was the strongest woman I knew. She was strong. It was plenty of time she could have gave up, but she ain't never give up on us. We started from the bottom. Our house burned down. We've been through a lot. This is the worst thing that could ever happen to me. I hate him, and I hope he rots in hell." When given the chance to speak, Stevenson offered what the family immediately recognized as a hollow apology. "It's not a day that don't go by that I wish for her to come to that door and for her to be here. She's a good person, a good mother, and a hard worker. She doesn't deserve to not be here today. So I'm sorry for all you who have lost her, and I hurt." The family rejected his words outright, stating he was only sorry because he had been caught. Their dismissal of his apology reflected a common sentiment among victims' families, that true remorse would have prevented the crime in the first place. As Stevenson was led away to begin his lengthy sentence, the courtroom erupted in a mixture of tears and relief. Justice had been served in legal terms, but for Shameka's daughters, mother, and loved ones, no punishment could restore what had been taken from them. Do you think justice was truly served in this case? Can any sentence, no matter how severe, provide real closure for families who have lost someone to violence? Share your thoughts in the comments below. In the aftermath of Shameka's murder and Rodney's sentencing, her mother, Shameka Oliver, channeled her grief into action. Determined that her daughter's death would not be in vain, Shameka co-founded Stop the Violence Jackson, a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting families affected by violence in their community. The organization provides crucial assistance to those suddenly facing the unimaginable, helping with funeral costs, rent payments, and other essential needs that can become overwhelming when tragedy strikes. Beyond financial support, Stop the Violence Jackson offers emotional resources and community connection for those navigating the aftermath of violence. No mother should have to bury her child because of domestic violence, Shameka has said repeatedly at community events. Her advocacy work has transformed her personal tragedy into a mission that potentially saves lives by raising awareness about the escalating nature of domestic abuse. For Shameka's 4 daughters, the journey forward has been immeasurably difficult. Growing up without their mother, the woman who dressed them in matching outfits, who never gave up despite hardships, who worked tirelessly to provide them stability, has left a void that can never be filled. Yet in their resilience, they carry forward Shameka's spirit and determination. Shameka, who spoke so powerfully at Stevenson's sentencing, has emerged as a voice for children affected by domestic violence. Her perspective, that she recognized Rodney was bad news from the beginning, highlights how important it is for adults to listen to children's instincts and concerns about the people entering their lives. Domestic violence experts point to several warning signs that were present in Shameka's relationship with Rodney, a partner with a history of violence or criminal behavior. Rapid relationship progression, isolation from friends and family, controlling behaviors disguised as care or protection, previous domestic violence incidents that escalated over time. Judge McBain's observation during sentencing bears repeating. Serious domestic violence offenders rarely improve without intervention. Instead, the abuse typically escalates, sometimes with fatal consequences. This pattern makes early recognition and intervention critical. Resources exist for those experiencing domestic violence, including the National Domestic Violence Hotline, which provides 24/7 support, safety planning, and connections to local resources. Many communities also have shelters and support groups specifically designed to help people safely leave dangerous relationships. Shameka's story illustrates how domestic violence cuts across all demographics, affecting successful, independent, loving people with strong support networks. Her career success, her role as a devoted mother, and her previous survival of an abusive relationship couldn't protect her from becoming a victim again. This reality underscores that domestic violence is not about the victim's strength or character, but about the abuser's choice to exert power and control through violence. The community of Jackson, Michigan continues to feel Shameka's absence. Her colleagues at Renaissance Northland Home remember her compassionate care for residents. Friends recall her infectious laugh and unwavering optimism, and her family keeps her memory alive through stories, photographs, and continued advocacy work. Through Stop the Violence Jackson, Solanda ensures that other families receive the support hers needed during their darkest hours, creating a living legacy that honors Shameka's caring spirit and transforms pain into purpose. Shameka Oliver's life was cut short at just 30 years old. A devoted mother, dedicated healthcare worker, and resilient survivor whose story ended far too soon. Her murder on May 28, 2020 represents not just an individual tragedy, but a stark reminder of how domestic violence can escalate to the most devastating conclusion. The justice system worked as intended in this case. Rodney Stevenson's 80 to 120-year sentence ensures he will never again have the opportunity to harm another partner. Yet for Shameka's 4 daughters, her mother Solanda, and all who loved her, no prison sentence can restore what was taken. They must navigate life without her presence, her guidance, and her love. What makes Shameka's story particularly poignant is how close she came to achieving the happiness she deserved. After surviving a previous abusive relationship, she had built a stable career, was raising her daughters with devotion, and believed she had finally found a partner who would treat her with respect. That this partner, the very person she trusted with her heart and her family, would become her killer underscores the complex and often hidden nature of domestic violence. The neighbor who called 911 after hearing the gunshot and witnessing the aftermath likely never imagined the crucial role they would play in bringing Shameka's killer to justice. Their willingness to get involved, to make that call and report what they saw, stands as a powerful example of how community vigilance can make a difference. Without that call, the truth of what happened to Shameka might have been much harder to establish. If you're watching this video, you now carry Shameka's story with you. You've heard about her strength, her love for her daughters, and her tragic end. But knowing her story comes with responsibility. The responsibility to recognize warning signs, to support those who might be in danger, and to speak up when something doesn't seem right. By subscribing to this channel, you're helping ensure that stories like Shameka's reach more people, potentially saving lives through awareness and education. Your subscription isn't just support for our content, it's a commitment to remembering victims of violence and learning from their experiences. If you know someone who might be in an abusive relationship, reach out. If you see warning signs in your own relationship, seek help. And if you hear something concerning, like that neighbor on Chittick Avenue, make the call that could make all the difference. Shameka Oliver was more than a victim. She was a mother who dressed her daughters in matching outfits, a caregiver who treated elderly residents with dignity, a friend who radiated warmth, and a woman who never stopped believing in the possibility of happiness. Her life mattered. Her story matters. And by sharing it, we honor her memory and work toward a world where fewer families experience such devastating loss. Leave a comment below sharing your thoughts on this case or domestic violence awareness in your community. Where are you watching from? Has Shameka's story impacted how you think about relationship warning signs? Your engagement helps this important conversation reach more people who need to hear it.